Well, Russian airlines now halting flights to Cuba because the island nation says it's run out of jet fuel. Here's what happened. Mexico cut off oil to Cuba after pressure from the Trump administration, but it's still sending humanitarian aid like essential food items. You'll remember that Venezuela was the top oil exporter to Cuba, but that ended after the U.S. military operation earlier this year. It's the latest step in an escalating energy crisis on the island. And our ABC News contributor and military analyst, Colonel Steve Ganyard, joins us now for a little more perspective here. All right, so this comes amid this looming humanitarian crisis. So how did we get here?
Well, if Cuba needs 100,000 barrels a day of oil just to keep the lights on, they now only have 40,000 barrels of oil a day because all of the oil that had been coming from Venezuela, the oil that had been coming from Mexico, has been cut off. And so now you have an economy that's already been on the rocks, on the ropes, and now you take away 60% of what they need just to basically survive. So we're getting to the point where collapse is at least in view of not only the Cuban economy, but the Cuban society. So there's no oil in Cuba the way there is in Venezuela, where you can tap into those reserves and magically a whole bunch of money appears to save the island.
And so let's talk about strategically, why the location of this and is so important because of how it'll impact the United States as well.
Yeah, think about it. So 90 miles between Key West and Cuba. So we saw in the Mariel boat lift.
You can stand there right at the end and you can see. Right, exactly.
An airplane. So it's not very far away, and it's easily accessible by boat. So think about if the Cuban economy collapses, if Cuban society collapses, what happens then? So it's not going to be a military operation. There's no way to go in and snatch a Maduro because there's a regime, the power is more diffuse within Cuba. But if you're going to go into Cuba, it's probably going to be U.S. military, not with guns, but with humanitarian aid, trying to take care of a very disastrous humanitarian situation.
This is also a country that has been struggling for decades. I mean, poverty is a real problem.
Yes, it's not like they're coming off a high where they've been a very developed country.
Right.
So it's one of these where people have always said, well, maybe next year they collapse. But now you take away 60% of their oil requirement and you can't even keep the lights on. That economy is doomed.
All right, we're going to stay on it. Steve Ganyard, thank you.